Hello and welcome to my channel, From Profession to Passion, with me, Vicky Mitman. The purpose of this channel is to inform and inspire professionals to live their careers on their terms. Whilst the traditional route in many professions may work well for some, it isn't for everyone, and there are different ways of doing things. On this channel, I'll be sharing my own story of how I combined my profession in law with my passion for coaching and mentoring, and I'll be interviewing other professionals who've developed their own side hustles, changed career directions altogether, or found some other way to involve their passions in their professional lives. A very, very warm welcome today to my new guest, Jenni Dunman. Jenni and I have known each other in the franchise industry for many, many years, and she is the founder and CEO of Daisy First Aid. But she's had a really interesting journey, and I'd love today to share a little bit of that with you. So Jenni, are you happy to share your story so far?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Vicky. It's really lovely to be able to actually, for me, to have a little look back on my life and see where I've come from and where I've got to. So yes, I feel like I've had probably three different elements of my career. I had 16 to 21 because I left school at 16. I did my GCSEs, then I went into full-time employment, worked in sports shops and nightclubs and bars. I left home very young, so I was always having to make rent and make payments and pay bills. So never had any like free money to do stuff, but actually what an amazing grounding it was for me to learn about money management, learn about hard work, learn about life, dealing with drunk people in nightclubs and, you know, customer service and all of those things was really, really important actually for what I went on to do later on. And I joined the police at 21. So for some people, I think that's quite young. For me, I had an awful lot of life experience already from there. I had a lot to give. I was very fearless. I was very tough, which is quite far away from what I am now, actually. But I very much, you know, born and bred in London, had quite an inner resilience. I didn't really fear anything. So I went into the police because they gave you free accommodation, they paid you, they fed you, and it was something different every day. So for me, I tended to get bored quite easily, tended to move from job to job. So I thought, well, perhaps that will tick all the boxes. And so that's exactly what I did. I went to Hendon. I met a whole different group of people that I wouldn't have met in like my other life, and absolutely loved it. I went and did 14 years at Westminster. I went got promoted from a detective to a detective sergeant. I ran my own team. I specialised in sexual offences. So my most favourite thing would be to like take a case of sexual assault from arresting a suspect, interviewing a suspect, taking them through to court, getting a conviction, putting them in prison. That was my joy. Yeah. And I loved it, and I was good at it, and managing people of all different walks of life, all different circumstances, from the most violent, horrible people to the most vulnerable victims of crime and everybody in between, is a real eye-opener. And I suppose now thinking back, first aid was always part of that. You always learned first aid, you know, regularly through your career. I always enjoyed the course, but I was always the first one to jump in. And I was actually thinking back, I was like that even before I joined the police. If someone was in distress, if someone was upset, if someone was hurt, I was always the first one in. So people talk about that fight or flight. I was always in. I was always fighting, never one to run away. But I loved doing first aid. I loved that helping nature of it. I just really enjoyed it. But I'd never thought that I would go on and do a career so involved in first aid later on. So I guess really first aid was like everything from shootings and stabbings to like, you know, someone that's inebriated on the street that just needs a little bit of help, and everything else, you know, in between that. But probably the pivotal moment, and I have spoken about this before, but I've got 3 children, but I had 2, and I was pregnant with my 3rd, and I'd gone to Starbucks with my friend, and we'd had our babies in the high chair, and the kids were having a cookie and we were having a chat, and my friend's little girl started to choke. And it was just one of those moments where mum didn't know what to do. No one else really knew what to do, but I did, because I've had that training drummed into me, you know, year after year after year. So I was very quick to take her child, to do the procedure, to remove the blockage, super quick. And actually, you know, it wasn't dramatic. It was perhaps dramatic and traumatic for mum, but for me, it was just, this is what you do. You know, kids choking, this is what you do. And her daughter was absolutely fine, made a full recovery straight away. I think she went in to, you know, finish the biscuit. You know, there was no trauma. But I remember going home to my husband and saying, why don't parents know this stuff? We have, you know, as we know, the most amazing children's activity providers, lovely courses, classes, things that people enjoy. But actually, if your child stops breathing, or they choke, or they're showing signs of meningitis, or, you know, multiple other things, why is it not mandatory, or why don't we know it? So I had a chat with, you know, my mum friends, and they were all like, yeah, that's actually a good point, actually, because I would just call the ambulance, which is great if you live in an area where you've got really fast you know, paramedics. We know that they are massively stretched now. Times are longer and longer and longer because they're so short staffed. 8 minutes is too late if a child's choking. Too late. So I suddenly felt this passion, and I was at a position where juggling, running a team in the police, having 2 children, being pregnant with a third, it wasn't really working out for me at that time. And I thought, well, let me go on maternity leave. Let me earn a little bit of money teaching my local parents how to save their children should something happen. That was my sole intention. I'm on statutory maternity pay, which is rubbish. If I can earn a few extra quid, great. So I went on the course, bought myself some mannequins, put it on my husband's credit card, and that's what I did. And I just booked a local pavilion, put it on Facebook, did the most basic GoDaddy website, and just started talking about it. And my first booking, I had 2 mums on it. I said, bring your babies. Let's just, you know, keep it really calm, casual. And I had 2 bookings, and 5 of my friends who also turned up just to make it look busy. And I loved it. I earned 50 quid that day, and I was over the moon. So what went from being just like, let me just earn a little bit of statutory maternity top up money, got busier and busier. So I took a career break from the police, which I'm so fortunate that I could do, because it just gave me that security blanket that I could go back if I needed to. But very, very quickly, I realized that there wasn't really anything out there that was like that. There's the great, you know, amazing first aid organizations that do the pediatric first aid. You can go for 2 days, you can go for 3 days, but there was nothing really centered on just the basics for parents, not the qualifications, just need to know stuff. And it just got busier and busier. And I think within kind of 3 months, I think I realized that I wasn't going back to the police. I think I realized that I was able to do this job, earn good money, fit it around my children, and I really loved it. And it was this realization that I was like, oh my God, I thought I was going to do 30 years in the police, retire with a good pension, and that would be it. I'd never be rich, but I would be happy, and I'd do a job that I love. That was 100% my focus. And then it was never, the funny thing is, it was always organic. There was never that, let's do this and let's get investment and you know, like you see these huge companies that do this. It was never like that. It was very, just a gradual, I think I got to the point where I was like, I'm so busy, I'm losing now that work-life balance that I was loving, because I'm now getting so many inquiries from across London and Kent and Surrey. What do I do? So, and I didn't know anything about business, nothing. I don't know how to run my own business. So I spoke to my accountant. Well, I didn't have an accountant, but I went to a networking meeting and met one. And I said, look, I know nothing. Like, talk to me like in the most layman terms, like dumb it down for me, because I don't know anything. So he said, well, how much money do you want to earn? And I said, well, look, if I can earn 500 quid, I can pay my bills. No extras, no luxuries, but I can get by. I'm very fortunate. I've got a husband who's in full-time employment, but if I can earn 500, that's good. And he was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And that was kind of it wasn't like an unachievable goal. It was like, I can get by on that. And I don't think I ever earned 500 quid from that moment. I think I always earn more. And I think my accountant now loves that story because he's been with me from like day one.
To this nationwide franchise that you now own. So, I mean, Daisy First Aid, how long has that been going now?
So from the first day I did my very first class is the 1st of November this year. Will be 10 years.
Wow, so an anniversary coming up.
Yeah, I didn't even realise that until I saw it on Facebook, I think a couple of days ago, where I'd put a post on that said, I'm so excited to start this new business. Please like and share my page to give me a head start.
And that was 10 years ago. And how many franchisees do you have now across the country?
So we have 107 now.
Wow.
107 amazing territories run by just fantastic trainers who basically do exactly what I did and run their business around their own lives.
Yeah. And that's such an important thing. I think the franchise market is really open to that now. There's a lot of franchise areas that allow for people to run a really flexible business. It doesn't have to be a full-time solid role between certain hours every day. It can be a lot more flexible, and I think that's why some people really like franchising as a career option after children, particularly.
Oh, I've seen the franchise industry grow in so many different directions in the last 10 years, you know. And actually, yeah, the core values for so many are, this is your business. You can work it flexibly around your life. But you're under this safety net of this brand that loves and cares for you and supports you. I love seeing other franchises succeed. It's lovely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I was really fascinated. There are certain threads that I think you mentioned have always been there. And I think that's a really important message for a lot of people who might be watching this video who are in a role currently that just doesn't quite work for them. Or maybe it does, but they think there's something more out there and they're just not sure what it might be. But I think the idea of the threads that, you know, managing difficult situations, which you've done in all of your roles, whether it was, you know, working in bars and clubs, whether it was in the police or whether it was, you know, life-saving situations, that ability to just get in there and do something has always been quite crucial for you. It sounds like you've always had that as quite a strong element through, and like you say, just always the one to dive in first and help someone. That's got to be such a big part of your journey.
It really is. When I think back, and actually you never really know what your transferable skills are until you look back on it, because I think sometimes if you are unhappy in your current career and you're looking at other things and perhaps you're like, I have no idea, but you tend to sometimes look for things that are similar, or that, you know, well, I am a photographer, so let me do something with photography. But actually you could literally go in any direction because your transferable skills could mean that that's quite exciting actually, isn't it? That you could actually do anything, something completely different that interests you. So, you know, open your mind that little bit wider. It's exciting.
It is. And actually that's one of the reasons when I looked at coaching, I was happy as a lawyer. I still am. I'm still a franchise lawyer almost full time, but my coaching business, which I run alongside it, came about because most of my legal work is talking to directors of companies about how best to go forward. And sometimes they don't always need legal advice. They might need a bit of coaching or a bit of space to evaluate options. And one of my clients said to me about 6 or 7 years ago, you're like the kind of silent board member that we go to just to ask us the right questions that we maybe don't know to ask ourselves or that we don't want to ask ourselves. But you never hesitate. You ask them and you give us a bit of time and we figure it out. And then after that, we look at, you know, the legal way to make that happen, or the best way with the least risk, whatever it might be. But actually just having that space and listening to people is something I use in my coaching, but it came from my legal training. I love that happened, and that happened quite organically for me. It was just a natural progression. And I think being a coach makes me a better lawyer. And I think having been a lawyer makes me a really competent coach. It just worked for me.
I completely agree. And don't you think, you know, just listening to people and hearing their story, because everyone's got a story, right? And they don't even realize they have a story until you give them the space to talk and the space to, you know, for them to talk and you to listen. You realize that they almost answer their own questions, but they'd never have that opportunity to do it unless you were there. Just that listening, giving them that space, them little prompts,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
it's really
questions that allow that space. And you're so right. I recently reread a book called Time to Think by Nancy Klein. It was something I read years ago in my coaching training, but it was about creating a thinking environment. And she posits in the book that the problem that created, the brain that created the problem in the first place is also capable of finding the solution. And that was a really big deal, because a lot of people think, oh, I need to go and figure this out. I'll ask somebody else what they think. But actually, if you throw it back to them and just give them a bit of space, whilst it might be uncomfortable at first, they probably will, with that space and some perspective, be able to figure out a solution that really works for them. And that is wonderful to me. When I see that happening in my coaching sessions, it completely fills my heart. I just love that feeling.
Don't you think we could talk about this for hours? I just think hours. It's so unbelievably fascinating.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, a question I often ask in these videos is, what advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know now? Maybe take yourself back to 18 or 21. You know, what do you tell yourself?
I think one of the biggest things I would tell myself is it's okay to try new things. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to do things and then go, yeah, it's not for me. I think in years gone by, it was like very much get a job, get a pension, you know, stay there, don't have too much on your CV. I think it's so different now. You try new things, you know, don't be afraid and don't be afraid to go, I tried it, I did it, I didn't like it. That's all right. Do something else. Like, and I would definitely say that to my children. You could try 100 things until you find the thing that you like. But don't feel guilty about it, or don't feel like embarrassed by it. Like, I now put myself in embarrassing or uncomfortable situations just to kind of see what happens. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I find that if I don't try it, how would I ever know?
Absolutely. And I love that idea of actually deliberately doing it, like pushing your comfort zones by putting yourself in that challenging position. That's a great way to do things. And you're right, you know, when it came to actually sort of running a coaching business, even though I'd been advising businesses for years, it's very different when you've got your own. And I realized on day one, I was everything from the CEO to the cleaner of my business. And I didn't know how to raise invoices. I didn't know what marketing channels to use, because as a lawyer in a private practice firm, I'd had support from a marketing team, from an accounts team, from a secretarial team. And it was just a totally different remit. And although I knew about some of the legal implications and things that I would need, terms and conditions, contracts, etc., I didn't know about so many other things. And it was really uncomfortable. But actually, I'm so glad I've done it, because I think actually having set up a business does provide a better insight for me as a lawyer, advising businesses about what they might need. And, you know, that was deeply uncomfortable to admit. I didn't know how to do a lot of stuff. But I grew so much in that first 18 months, 2 years of running my own business.
Yeah. And do you know what? Now, I don't know how about you now, but if I don't know something now, I just say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to be like, I don't know how to do that. You know, even if I'm in an environment where perhaps other people think I should know. Whereas I think 10 years ago, I would just, you know, pretend or just keep quiet. Whereas now I'd be like, no, you are the expert. Please explain to me. You know, I'm much more confident in that way. I don't know if you feel like that now.
Definitely, I'm definitely confident in getting the right advice at the right time. And I'm also confident as well that if I don't know something, I'll probably either know who to ask or figure it out. And I think that resourcefulness and that resilience that you build up when you're trying to figure out how to do things for yourself that first time, it's really, really important. And I now think if I was going to, you know, start another business or do something else, I'd be saying, sure, I can do that. And even if I don't know how to do everything, I will figure it out. And, you know, putting yourself in that slightly challenging position and having it work out well, in my case, luckily, but yeah, with some, as you say, mistakes along the way, with some specialisms along the way that didn't quite pan out the way I thought. And then I fell into the part of this video series, the From Profession to Passion. It's career coaching for professionals who feel that because they've got certain qualifications and because they've been in a certain role for so long that they can't really change, or that they'd be throwing that all away to do something different. And I'm really keen to help people realize that all the things they've done have been valuable. They've built skills, they've built experiences, they've built confidence, which will be hugely important whatever they do next. And that came along quite naturally and organically, but that's not where it started as an executive coach. So.
Yeah, it's just a great journey. I think I love accidental CEOs.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so, so much. And if someone wants to get in touch with you, Jenny, look at Daisy First Aid or ways to have conversations with you, how's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like if you want to book the first aid courses, then daisyfirstaid.com is the best way. You just put a postcode in and contact your local trainer. If you want to speak to me, hook up me on LinkedIn. Jenni Dunman. I'm happy to always have a chat. I love a chat.
Good. Well, I will link in the description box below your website for Daisy First Aid, and I'll also link you in when I put it out on social media channels, so hopefully people will find you. But I think it's so important that these video series have given people a bit more of a story, and someone will just resonate with it or hear something. And I always say with these, if I help one person think about things a bit differently or have that confidence then to at least explore how their career might look different, they might be so excited by that, they might find something really fascinating.
I just think you only live once, don't you? Like, don't look at the end of your life and be like, I wish I'd done that, or I wish I'd tried that. Just do it now.
Just do it now. Love that. Love that. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it's provided some food for thought. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe below and feel free to like or comment. I'd love to know what you think. If you're interested in hearing more about this, please join my Facebook community, From Profession to Passion with Vicky Mittman. I'll see you next time.